Hello and welcome to the Running with the Bulls podcast. Adam Shalafu, joined by Josh Sclair. New feed, new co-host, new offseason, a lot of news, possibly a new look for the Chicago Bulls. Let's bring in the new co-host, Josh Sclair. Josh, thanks for joining me now and forever.
Appreciate to be here. Love talking some NBA. Love talking my Bulls, and we got a lot to cover about the Bulls today. A couple of big moves they've made recently.
Absolutely. And Josh, just to tell the people listening a little bit about you, I know that you and I are probably the two, dare I say, biggest Bulls fans we know.
That's a
Uh,
fact.
I mean, you could tell me what color Tom Boerwinkel's socks were December 14th, 1970, whatever.
Still holds the team record for rebounds in one game.
Boerwinkel does.
37 in one game. Oakley is second with 35.
I'm surprised Rodman doesn't hold that.
I am as well, but it is Oakley and Boerwinkle. Those are your top two.
This is the co-host you're getting, folks. Tom Boerwinkle expert, Josh. Anyway, yeah, thank you so much. We go way back to our days at Radio DePaul Sports. You were the host of Deep Dish Hoops Talk. I was the host of Running with the Bulls. We had plenty of crossover together, worked on a lot of projects over the years, and now ultimately bringing back Running with the Bulls with another DePaul Blue Demon and jumping right into it. So super excited. Anything else you want to add before we get into the Chicago Bulls, Josh?
I'm good as far as that goes. Let's get to the topics that we got tonight because we got a lot to discuss.
Yes, we do. Let's get right into it then. Let's start with kind of a little. So today's, June 30th. Let's rewind just a little bit. I think the good starting point is actually before the draft. Let's talk about the Alex Caruso trade for Josh Giddey. It sounds like I'm all for the trade. Maybe you're on the other side of the fence. And just to, recap the trade itself, it was a 1-for-1. Caruso for Giddey. Caruso honestly became pretty coveted in recent years, and a guy that the Bulls wanted to hang on to as long as they could. 29, I want to say 30, not sure when he turns 30, but he was 29 most of last season, and more of a defensive guy, so these points per game won't necessarily mean too much, but 10 points per game. He was 10th in Defensive Player of the Year voting. He was all defensive second team. He was all defensive first team the previous year. Shot 40% from three. Just the epitome of a 3-and-D guy, more than just a sharpshooter. This guy's going to get you a ton of deflections. Anyone listening to this show probably is very familiar with his work. So a tough guy to get rid of. Now let's talk a little bit about Josh Giddey. He got into a little bit of hot water, but nothing came of it in the NBA circle. So I really don't want to touch on that. Just keep it purely on the basketball with Josh Giddey, the kind of player they're getting back. He's super young. I think that's a very important thing to say. 21 years old, going to be 22 years old. Now, last season, he didn't get the kind of minutes he was used to. He was basically playing alongside. He still started 80 games with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, but he basically was no longer the player he was because he was a shooting guard instead of the point guard. But you bring in Giddey. He is 33-7 from three-point range in 25 minutes. Just so he actually had a career low in minutes his third year in the NBA. 12 points per game, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists. He'd be good for about a block and a steal if I'm rounding up. Per 36 minutes, 17.7 points per game, 9.2 rebounds per game, 6.9 assists. So let me volley the ball to you, Josh. Why don't you like the move?
I don't like the move, and the main reason I don't like the move is it's not that I don't like Josh Giddey as a player. I think Josh is a fine young player who can develop into something nice. The problem is he emphasizes a problem the Bulls have had consistently for a long time. He can't shoot. I believe he shot 11% with contested threes, or guys were within 6 feet of him when he shot a three. Other than that, he could shoot the ball. Great. If I had no one in front of me, I probably could hit 3 out of 10 from three at least. So the problem is that you might be getting this young guy, but at the same time, what you're getting is a Bulls team that, great, you got this young asset, but Sam Presti doesn't give up on a young asset if he doesn't feel like he fits and wants nothing to do with them.
Well, that's the thing. He didn't fit in Oklahoma City. Like, this is a true win-win. Oklahoma City is ready to win a championship now. They don't have the time right now to sorry, I actually just had my super futuristic desk raised without me telling it to. I'm in outer space, folks. Let me bring that down to 32 inches apparently. Anyway, I think what's crazy about this deal is everyone's always like, who won the trade? Well, both teams won. Like, the Thunder are trying to win a championship, and Caruso is a championship piece. But if the Bulls keep him, when's the next time the Bulls are going to be competing for a championship? It's almost like they did Caruso a solid by being like, hey, why don't you go play for a team where you can make an impact right now, make deep playoff runs? We'll take the dude who still needs to develop his jump shot a little bit more, but is already a brilliant playmaker, already gets a lot of rebounds. I mean, you don't see a lot of 6'8" point guards walking around, and this isn't a Michael Carter Williams. Like, this is a good young player who kind of floundered last year, but I think it's just because, like, he wasn't in the role that he was designed to be in. In those games when he was playing without SGA, he was really good.
Yeah, I think that it'll be interesting to see. My main concern is that his defensive capabilities are to be questioned.
They need to get better.
He needs to get better. You
And that's
cannot
the thing,
be
21 years
taken out of
old,
playoff games.
time to get better. Like, there's time to get better.
And I will say this, he's in a good situation because when you're on a young team like the Bulls are finally doing,
Right.
they're finally doing it. It's not that I have a problem with this trade. It is the track record of this franchise when they have rebuilds, how badly they mess it up. Jerry Krause tried it before. He couldn't do it. Then John Paxson came in, and I will give him a lot of credit. In 2 seasons, he got this team into the playoffs. In 2 seasons.
Yeah, Paxson did a good job back in like the Heinrich, Duhan day.
Did a great job. He got Nocioni, he got Dang, Gordon, Heinrich, which never should have been a Bull. It should have been Dwayne Wade the whole time, but he didn't pull the trigger on a trade. That's a whole different story. But
developed Joakim Noah too. I mean,
he
like,
did, and he got him for Eddie Curry in that draft, and that was a huge steal of a trade for Eddie Curry for Joakim Noah. Basically, that was a great trade. And technically Tyrus Thomas, but I really feel as though, I'm looking at this Bulls team and it comes down to this. Are you capable now that you are deciding we're done with DeMar, we're done with Levine, we're done with Vucevic, who you never should have re-signed in the first place because you had the front office telling you to run it back. And let's be honest, we all know the front office was telling them to run it back because they love to have that one playoff game or 2 extra playoff games to make them some extra money.
or even worse, this play-in tournament that
Which
we've
I
been
guess
dealing with.
counts, but it doesn't. Okay, great. You get an extra game of revenue. Like, does it matter in the long run when your fans are just seeing a bunch of garbage on the floor that shouldn't be on the floor? So,
it's almost worse than missing the playoffs altogether in some ways, but let's not go down that rabbit hole.
No, the point I'm trying to make here overall is that the Bulls are trying to steer in a direction. That direction is the 2025 draft, which is loaded. And I understand what they're doing, and I applaud them for doing this because if they didn't do this, they would not have a first-round pick next year. It goes to the Spurs via the DeMar DeRozan trade. It's top 10 protected for next year. So, and then I don't think that they have to convey it another year. I think it's just for next year, and then it conveys to a second-round pick. I believe, I'd have to look again, but I believe that's what it is. So, if that is the case, you're looking at a Bulls team that finally has a direction, but the question becomes, is AK still handicapped because he's not going to be able to rebuild the way he wants to? Number two, the last time you had a rebuild, you had all this young talent. You had Lauri Markkanen, you traded him away for nothing, and now look at him. You traded away Daniel Gafford for nothing, and one of the
Markkanen, essentially, if they don't trade Markkanen, they don't get DeMar.
and I understand that, but
That's the financial casualty. If you know what I mean, that money went somewhere else.
the point I'm trying to make is that the Bulls continuously do things like this where they don't develop young talent or they try to rebuild and it didn't work. And I'm worried that AK is not going to be able to produce the way we need to see it. So
Well,
I'll give him time for now, but we need to see the results of this
yes,
rebuild.
yes, we do.
I need to see results. You have a ton of bad contracts right now. You still got to deal with Lonzo's contract this year because no one's going to want to pick him up. You got Zach LaVine, who nobody wants. So you have $60 million on your books right now, at least for next year, that nobody wants. Unless Zach LaVine can help you win games. And you don't want somebody there who can help you win basketball games. I would rather those shots, and we'll talk about this guy in a minute, be going to Patrick Williams, who I need to see step up and be the guy who I have seen when he has flashes, has an ability to be a good scorer in this league. But because you have a guy like Zach there and Kobe White, and now Josh Giddey, you've got three
You're
guys.
obviously saying tank. Like I know you're just to clarify, because you haven't used the word necessarily,
You
but you're
need to
saying
tank.
that
You have an amazing top five next year with Ace Bailey, Cooper Flagg, just to name a couple of those guys.
Yeah.
You don't have to take the opportunity to say, we are going to stink and we are okay with that. Because the reality is it wasn't working and you can't just keep trying to, you can't keep trying what they're doing. So
I got a pin in two things you said. First, the one, you said rebuild the way AK wants to. So Josh Giddey, who's 22, I'm seeing. All right, I'm looking at the table of contracts right now. So 22 years old, on the books for 8 million, restricted free agent next season. It's important to consider that they are going to have to pay him. They're going to keep him around. But the reason that I think that like this is building the way he wants to, because you look at Lonzo Ball and Josh Giddey, and they're actually pretty similar. I think Lonzo Ball's the better defender, but the Bulls want to get back to playing with the pace that made them really dangerous when Lonzo was healthy, and having a really good rebounder from the guard position, having a switchable defender from the guard position. Like you said, he's going to need to step it up on the defensive side of the floor. But I think that, like, I kind of see AK's fingerprints all over this particular trade, because he is getting a big guard that it's almost like, I don't want to say that they're the same player, but they have similarities on offense, and it resets the clock by bringing in, instead of 27-year-old Lonzo Ball, who isn't just like coming back this season, but in attempting what would be like a Sean Livingston-esque comeback of his career. Like, the guy's been dead in the water for 2 years. And so like, you hope he can play. The Bulls can't really deal him. He's obviously, option to the player option he had. So on the books for 21 this year, but then next year, unrestricted free agent. And so, Vucevic next year, he's still on the books one more year, but the money starts to clear out pretty fast, to the point where if you can get rid of that LaVine contract, which through 26-27, all right, in 26-27 rather, that's 28%, just under 29% of the Bulls' total cap. He's on the books for 48, almost 49 million. And so that's obviously an albatross of a contract. And I think that's why we're reading all these things about teams not wanting to bite. But I do think, like you were kind of like hinting at, that, yeah, now is the time. Like DeMar isn't officially gone yet, but he's as good as gone. It kills me that they re-signed Vucevic and that he's 34 years old for his price. Like a team like the Warriors, a team that is like trying to make it work now still, or a team like the Lakers, who are rumored to be looking for a more established big man. 20 million is a pretty good deal for a guy like Vucevic, who, they're in win now. He doesn't have to be the best player on your team, but he can be a 16 and 12 center. You know what I mean? Like he's going to help some teams. But right now, where the Bulls are at, like, no, you need that money off the books. You need to focus on I don't want to, I hate to use the word tanking. I want to use the word rebuilding. But yeah, now is the time to consider the future. You do that by, like, next year, I want it to be Patrick Williams, Kobe White, Josh Giddey, and whoever else they put out there. Later in the show, we'll talk about some of the guys we want them to target.
Yeah, the question I have is, what is your starting five going to look like? Right now, it's probably going to be Josh Giddey, Kobe
It's going to
White,
be Levine, unfortunately.
Zach LaVine for now,
Kobe.
Patrick Williams, and my guess is free agent X, because I don't think Vucevic is going to be back. I think they're going to somehow pull off a Vucevic trade.
So
I think
it's like Vucevic, or, to show my hand a little bit, a guy I want them to get is like James Wiseman. But
James
yeah, like,
Wiseman would be fine as a glue piece until they can sign him to a 2-year deal for cheap. And then if they find their center, they find their center. And I'm okay with that.
yeah,
But reality of the situation is the Bulls they screwed themselves, and they have no one to blame but themselves, because they kept trying to plug away with this team. Now you have an aging center that maybe has some trade value, maybe doesn't. You have a shooting guard that has no trade value whatsoever. You can call him small forward, but I call him a shooting guard because that tends to what he plays usually.
for Levine, you're saying?
Yes, for Zach LaVine. He's
Yeah.
more of a shooting guard than I would say a
Levine's
small
still a
forward.
really damn good player. Like,
He is, and I don't think
he's just,
I don't think there's any reason for him to be untradeable.
he
There
just
are
doesn't need to be on this like super duper max that he's on. Like he's making ungodly amount of money. He's making like A+ money for B+ production, and that's why no one wants to bite. And he's 29, and that scares teams that aren't in win now mode. And the teams that are in win now mode, or a lot of them are in win now mode because they have the cap space. Like that's why one of the teams that gets floated out in this, and I'll pull up the trade machine, is like the Warriors, where you could maybe throw in like Kuminga and Wiggins. Well, obviously CP3 is gone, but like Kuminga and Wiggins for Levine. And that I don't even
Well,
know
if
if
you
the
saw the report, did you see the report? What they said?
no, who said what?
So there's a report that they offered they offered Levine for Wiggins and Chris Paul, and they just said no, we don't want that. That's not good enough for us. They
The
turned down a
Warriors said
deal like
no.
the Warriors said no to that and just cut. They would rather cut CP3 than give him and Andrew Wiggins up. That's how bad they think Levine is. And to
Well, I
me,
don't think it's the bad. I don't think they don't like Levine. They don't like the contract, and also that right now they're probably trying to like they're working on some other things. The Klay Thompson deal seems like it's going to be pending, but like Wiggins 26 million. Kaminga is 7 million. Levine 43 this year. So like even that trade on its own, like it's insane to say, like, the Warriors would still have to like put more people in. Like they would, and at that point, like, what do you do? Like Kevon Looney. And at that point, the Warriors are like, we're giving you maybe a little too much. Even then, like, it still doesn't work. Like, it's a nightmare contract to trade. I think it says more about like how untradeable the contract is than like Levine as a player. And that's, as a Bulls fan, it's so frustrating. It's like he's a good player, but we're stuck with him, and he is gonna help us win games. But like, we want to rebuild. It's
you know, I'm just not surprised by what's going on. It's unfortunate because as a fan, you want to see your team be able to do what they want to do. But the Bulls put themselves in this spot, and there's no one to blame but themselves. Now, if Zach LaVine hadn't gotten hurt last year and he was still averaging 22, 23 points a game, I think that there would still be an issue with that contract. The reality is, I'll give you an example.
He's getting 30 points a game money.
I'll give you an example of a contract that nobody wanted to take on. I mean, it's a totally different player, but the fact still remains. You are not going to be able to trade a guy if you're paying him money that no one wants to take on because he's not worth the value of the contract. Remember when Nicholas Batum got $100 million?
No, but wow.
Nicholas Batum got $100 million from the Hornets. And guess how long they tried to trade him for? And they couldn't trade him. So I'll give you the contract. He made a total, if I looking at this right, he made 21, 22 and a half, 24, and $25 million for a span of 4 years. And you couldn't trade that contract. It was only after he cut his salary by 250% that they were able to finally make a trade offer. And there's a reason why. If you are not worth the money that they are paying you, and you are way, and I mean way overpaid. Like, Nicholas Batum got offered something that Patrick Williams couldn't even get in 2024.
And Batum never made an all-star game like
Right,
LaVine.
but the point is, let me just make my point. Zach LaVine is not worth the money that he's making. He's worth
No.
30 million. He's not worth $45 million.
No.
So you're not going to get, it's not as simple to get a contract like that off the books. You have to be paid what you're worth. And he is not paid what he's worth. He got a contract that he is not worth. Certain guys are not worth a max contract. You could even argue Scotty Barnes is not worth a max contract. You could make that argument, and he's going to get a max contract. He's a very nice young player. Don't get me wrong, but do I think is he worth a max contract? Maybe, but I don't think definitively he is. Zach LaVine is not worth the max contract, and his defense hell ain't worth a max contract.
But it looked like he was trending that way, and the Bulls were also trending a different direction. But here we are. But you know, I feel like we got to move on from the.
Yeah, let's move on to the P. Will signing, and and so we got P. Will signing for 5 years, $90 million. And I will say this: I will give AK a lot of credit. He has a tendency to sign guys to decent value. And he got Patrick Williams for a very solid value here. And this is what I like about the contract. P. Will's still a very young player. At times, he's flashed a lot of what he can do. I think there's a 15, 16 point per game season in there where he can make the contract worth it. And I think eventually, and I think we've seen P. Will with his defense, it's just a matter of him staying healthy and him proving that he's worth the money that he's gotten. But 18 million for a guy like him is not a bad contract. I don't think it is. What do you think?
I think it's good value. He's 23, right? Let me just double check.
He's gonna be 23. Yeah, he played 70 games his rookie year, and he played 80 games the year before that. But other than that, he's had 2 very injury-plagued seasons. So he's been solid, but he actually took a step back last year in terms of his shooting percentages by a little bit. But overall,
he played a shortened season as well.
Yeah, and I just think next year we're going to have to see just how much he's worth in terms of that contract. That's going to be the key.
Well, here's why I like it. He's weird. He's a weird player. Like, there were times his rookie year we were really excited about him. He's a really good defender. I feel like he's one of the best defenders on the team. The guy who's going to be really important just based on that. And on his career, he's a 41% three-point shooter. So when you look at he's 23 years old, he's shooting 41% from 3 on his career, and he's kind of been like this player that the issue's been like, hey, go be more aggressive. But how are you supposed to be aggressive when DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine constantly have the ball in your hands? Like, it's almost like to develop him, they got to go, or at least DeMar's got to go. Like we said, we kind of think that they're going to be stuck with LaVine. So assuming they're stuck with LaVine, at least now there's a chance for him to develop. But you almost have to, especially because like where the Bulls are, just like big picture, as far as like they're in a very hamstrung situation, and you can If you're asking where, well, you can rewind the beginning of this podcast, frankly, because we've been explaining it. But like, no, you have to give this 23-year-old 3-and-D guy a chance to emerge. And hopefully he takes that Kobe White type leap. And, you mentioned Giddey's not a great scorer, well, or shooter rather. Like, okay, that's fine. Like, get the ball to Patrick Williams, get the ball to Kobe White. Like, it's time to have these guys become like, even if, let's say Patrick Williams only shoots like 37% from three this year, but he takes like twice as many threes a game, I'm all about it. Like, I want more points out of Williams, and I want him to have a bigger role. I think the signing is one that is just perfectly fair. It's giving him the chance to earn the money that he thinks he's deserving. And he hasn't quite proven it yet, but like, you're giving him the money and you're also giving him the chance to prove it. And when you look at the upside of the guy, you kind of have to. Right now, I see it as like the core of the Bulls, not like from a competitive standpoint, but from like the future core, if you will. I'm looking at it, and it's Kobe White is the best player on the Chicago Bulls. He's 24. Patrick Williams is 23. Josh Giddey is 22. Dosunmu is 25. Those are the guys you're keeping around. And so build
And
around that. Build around
one
that.
thing
Be
I'd like to say,
young, be exciting.
and one thing I think we need to point out also is how good Ayo Dosunmu was at the end of the regular season. The guy was putting
Yeah.
up serious numbers. Ayo Dosunmu has found his edge in the league, and I give AK a
Yeah.
clap for that one, because Ayo is a steal of a player and is proving and has continued to prove his worth in this league. In fact, if I look up his stats, just I believe from like the All-Star break on, he was absolutely phenomenal. In fact, I'm looking at him right now. He averaged 17 points and 5 assists on 50% shooting. And he was basically almost a 50-40-90 player in the second half of the season. That's a steal of a player that you got in the second round who is proving to be a huge contributor to this team. And I think that you do have some good young talent here. It's just going to be the fact that if you're stuck with Zach LaVine, you got to say, Zach, we got to give the ball to Pat Will. We got to give it to Ayo. We got to give it to Kobe. You got to be trying and willing to pass the ball 5-6 times and get 5-6 assists, because we're not going to just let you shoot it out there and play iso ball. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
Zach LaVine has no place on this team now. The point is, it's going to be the ball's going to be spread around and guys are going to get different shots, and that's the way it's got to be. The problem is that, where are those shots going to come from? And I think we need to see P. Will step up this year. And this would be the perfect opportunity, because when guys are down and P. Will's asked to come and step up, P. Will has, like when he had that huge game against the Miami Heat this year. He's had a few games this year where he really stepped up. He went 8 for 10 against the Heat. I remember it was in December that he had a great game. The Bulls lost that game by, I think, only a couple of points, but Patrick really stepped up in that game. And it's those kind of games that I need to see him have more of, because he needs to prove that he was worth that 4th pick.
Yeah.
Because I'm still mad they didn't take Tyrese Halliburton. And you need to prove that, okay, there's a reason we took you, and you better prove, because you're not going to be able to prove that you're better than Tyrese. You're not.
No, but at this point, just be good.
Just be good and show that you have value for a 4th pick in the draft, who came off the bench, no less.
Halliburton also got the chance to have a role that made sense for him right away. Williams, I feel like his role has been kind of in flux his entire career. And one of my critiques on the Bulls has been like, how are you going to develop your young guys when like they aren't? You have to, like, frankly, failure is part of improvement. Like, you have to let those guys fail a little bit and let them learn and let them go through those growing pains. And you can't develop a player by just like, there's some players who just need to go to the G League. And there's other players who need to like get real game experience, and it's not always going to be pretty. Like, people talk about Kobe Bryant airballing a shot deep into the playoffs in the Western Conference Finals in 1998 against the Utah
At least he
Jazz.
had the guts to shoot those.
Yeah, yeah. But like the thing is, like, he came out all right, but that's growing pains. That's an example of growing pains. It's time to let these guys either sink or swim. But it's time for the Bulls to kind of like try to. These next days are going to be very telling, right? And that's why we're going to kind of wrap it up and hopefully circle back soon here. But like the next days are going to be telling. Like they're gonna need to try to get rid of Levine, and that realistically, like when we were texting about it the other day, I said I don't think they're going to move him till February. Like
I
it's
would think that's probably what's going to happen because somebody's going to need his services.
Yeah, so it's going to be like, all right, hey, so they're going to keep dangling the carrot, and someone's going to be like, all right, man, Zach LaVine might help us win a championship. Let's just go get him. Let's just go eat that contract. And he'll help a team. He's a really good player. But that's kind of like where they're at with it. The Vucevic contract, I'm pretty confident they'll be able to deal. We got a few minutes left here, Josh. Who do you want the Bulls? Any guys you want them to target now that free agency is officially started?
I think James Wiseman is the guy that I want to see him target. I honestly feel like just bring in guys to fill in the roster.
Well, also James Wiseman fits the kind of narrative we're talking about right now, because like he's another early 20s player that has shown flashes. Like he's 22, 23 years old. Like get him as your core of like fun young Bulls, and give him a chance. And maybe he's good, maybe he's not. But the thing is, you can throw a few million at him and kick the tires on him. And if best case scenario, he gets it together. We've seen it happen before. But like, you don't have anything to lose. It's not like you have to throw $20 million at this guy. Give him the minimum. Say, hey, we're going to sign you on a prove it deal. And then if you're good, we'll bring you back.
Yeah, I mean, he had an okay year last year, 7 points a game, 5 rebounds. Jalen Duren took his spot in the
right.
And it is what it is.
Because he had some really good games when he got traded to Detroit.
When given starter minutes, he has proven to be a decent center. It's just he can't shoot the three, which is a huge in the modern game. If you can't shoot the three, you've got to be able to do other things. He's not a great rim protector. So you're really just getting a run-of-the-mill average center. And it's okay. He's just a young glue piece that can just fill in for now. And I'm okay with that. The point of this is if you're going for the 2025 draft, because I just look at the protections, that pick is top 10 protected this year going into 2025, and then it's only top 8 protected for the next 2 years. So you're going to lose that pick one way or the other, possibly in the next 3 years. So you need to be prepared for that. And you need to be prepared for the fact that if you're going to tank, you got to tank. And you got to be ready for that tank. So I think a guy like James Wiseman would be a good fit. And I think overall, say goodbye to DeMar DeRozan. He's going to the Clippers. It was a nice run. I loved DeMar when he was here. I loved him being Mr. Fourth Quarter, but the time has passed on that deal.
Could have been really fun if Lonzo was healthy. He wasn't. Things didn't go as planned.
Yeah, so I think it's just the way it is now. Let's just move on, and you're going to have a new look Bulls team next year that's not going to make the playoffs. It's a matter of how bad they're going to be. And I think James Wiseman is really the main guy, I would say, that I would expect the Bulls to pick up. I would not expect them to. I expect them to stay under the radar. I believe there's a center on Denver that doesn't really play much. You'll know who it is. It's not DeAndre Jordan. I believe there's a backup center there. Maybe they could go look at him as well, if I know his name right. Let me look it up really quick. But maybe you can take a flyer on someone like him just to say, okay, well, if you trade Vucevic, we can get him on a deal, and we can sit. If I have,
you're talking about the young guy. He's like in his second or third year.
Geeky and Najee. You can get someone
Yeah,
like
Zeke Najee. Yeah, he's solid.
you can
I'd be
get
okay
someone
with
like
that.
him and say, let's take a flyer on him and let him be the backup center, maybe the starting center if you want to do something like that, and just see what happens. I think you're
Yeah.
at a point where you can, if you're in tank mode like we're talking about, you can experiment a little bit until you find the piece that you want to replace that person. So that's kind of where we're at this point. I think James Wiseman's the main piece you're going to look at for the Bulls in this offseason. That's the main piece.
Um, Real quick, and let's talk about this guy more next time, but I do like the pick at Matas Bazelis. He was the number 6 prospect going into, obviously played for G League Ignite, 6'10" local kid. I still need to like watch more tape. Because like I wasn't watching Ignite games, shocker, but
I
the
wasn't
kid is feisty. He's athletic.
I
He's
think
a
he'll be a good
dog.
player. I think he'll be a good player. And
Yeah.
I would not be surprised if I would not be surprised if he starts at least 30 games next year.
Yeah.
I would not
We'll
be
see.
surprised.
A lot of well, I think that depends on a lot of other things. Couple guys I would like to see the Bulls keep an eye on. If it's true, Walker Kessler is available for trades. I would love
That
for the
would be a
Bulls
great
to
pickup for the Bulls. That would be
go
a
get Walker
wonderful pickup.
Kessler. Shout out Gabriel Wilkins for that one. We'll have to get him on soon too. Precious Achua would love that. The guy just plays
Precious would be
hard.
fine. Precious would be totally
Yeah.
fine.
Keep him young, keep him versatile.
Not
Uh,
Gollum's Precious. Not Gollum's Precious. I don't want that Precious.
Gary Trent Jr. would be cool too, but
Gary
we'll
Trent
see.
would be nice, but I really think the Bulls have the guards that they need. I think
Yeah,
so.
I think so. I don't think you really need to do that. At that point, just add some veterans, fill out the roster, but like the right veterans, leaders, mentors.
I think you can find a mentor in this team. And you talked about this one, and I would be happy about it. If they brought back Taj Gibson, I would be totally fine with that.
Love that. Thank you all for listening. That's all for this time. We'll see you next time on Running with the Bulls podcast.